This is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have USDA Inspector General escorted out of her office after defying White House from USAtoday.com posted by Flimsy Al 5563. And yeah, personally, I think the Libertarian position is, not just to fire the USDA Inspector General, but rather to get rid of the entire USDA. It might be well intentioned, to police people's drugs and drugs and stuff. I think that's the United States Drug. I forget what USDA is. I think it's the Department of Agriculture. Yeah, so I think it's good to it's well intentioned that they want to keep agriculture safe, but ultimately I think it's up to each individual to grow whatever produce they feel like, and the state shouldn't be involved with that. And yeah, I definitely would hopefully they don't replace anyone in there. They don't replace Trump. Doesn't just replace him with a sycophant to him. But I think that's what's going to happen. If I was him, I would just leave the position blank permanently and get rid of the rest of the department while we're at it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump fired 400 FAA senior officials, the TSA head, and 3,000 air traffic controllers just 8 days ago. Policy choices have consequences. Today, American Airlines Flight 5342 collided with a Black Hawk over the Potomac, killing 65 Americans. This is the Trump #plane crash, #AA5342. And that was posted by Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the Anything Goes News subreddit. And that was originally a tweet from the News Desk Live. Yeah. So my thoughts on that are, it's the same people are saying, oh, Trump's politicizing the tragedy by bringing up by saying DEI, Obama, and Biden are responsible for it, are the same people who are probably retweeting this as well. These days it seems you just can't have tragedy anymore. Everything has to be used as to push an agenda. These people these days just never let a good tragedy go to waste. And yeah, ultimately my position on this is, I would say, I think, regulations are something that, is more well-intentioned, but, you can either have dangerous freedom or peaceful slavery, and I personally would prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. And, yeah, I don't know, maybe it was like a false flag to make people more sympathetic for federal employees, I don't know, but regardless, I think, safetyism is well-intentioned, but accidents still happen anyway, even if you take every precaution possible. So I think the libertarian solution is, just get rid of the FAA and hope people don't crash into each other regardless. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Hegseth strips Miley of his security detail, orders investigation into his conduct from NPR.org, posted by Zachness. And yeah, I personally don't really care for Mark Miley, and I think he's only being kicked out because of his anti-Trump statements. But if Hegseth wants to kick him out, I think he should have every right to do so. Ultimately the person in position of authority can justify whatever they want to. That's why I personally don't care for any of the government, because it's just subject to the whims of whatever the person in authority says. Then we have new law would create an internet kill switch to fight movie piracy sites from Gizmodo.com by Flimsy Al 5563. And yeah, I definitely don't think that's good. I think if people want to pirate, they should be able to pirate. I don't think it's very ethical, but sometimes people aren't going to be ethical, and you just have to deal with that. And yeah, I definitely think the idea of internet kill switch is a very bad idea, especially when it gets extended to, we're going to use this internet kill switch to censor any and all wrong thing on social media, and I don't think that would be very libertarian. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump's FCC chief opens investigation into NPR and PBS from NPR.org by Ninja Lover, and yeah, I personally don't care for either of those. I think the more libertarian position is to just get rid of NPR and PBS in addition to the FCC. But, if they want to open an investigation to them, I think that's fine too. Hopefully, they'll cut some of the government funding to them. I don't think government funding should go to private editorial or public editorial services. I think the private market should be providing the editorial services because we have more enough editorial services already as is when it comes to the private market. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Tennessee passes a bill that makes it a felony for elected officials to vote against Trump immigration policies, from WKRN.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. That's crosspost from the r/law subreddit. And yeah, I definitely don't think you should be telling people how not to vote. But regardless, the state can justify doing whatever it wants to. So sometimes you just have to cope with that. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have efforts to erase the insurrection, deletion of January 6th database by Trump administration appears to violate federal law, Watchdog says, from longcrime.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. That's crossed from the r/law subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think we should have any government databases at all. So I support them getting rid of the January 6th database. I personally think most of the January 6 people were more idiots than they were terrorists, but I don't think we should have any databases for actual terrorists either, because terrorism is subject to the whims of whatever the government defines it as, and they might consider any and all dissent to be terrorism, and that's increasingly what it seems that they're pushing. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the immigration crime link from London Limelight, and they said from the American Economic Association, the immigration crime link emphasis added, since at least the 1800s, immigration crime frequently linked to American political rhetoric and debates, but what does the data actually show? A paper in the American Economic Review Insights assembled the first comprehensive picture of immigrant incarceration rates spanning 150 years of U.S. history. Their findings repudiate widely held assumptions about immigration and public safety and reveal new patterns in immigration crime data. Figure 1, see below. From the author's paper, depicts 6 panels of tracking incarceration rates among males between the ages of 18 and 14 for first-generation immigrants. Orange circles newborn citizens, blue squares for the period 1870 to 2019. The author's work challenges the idea that the immigration leads to higher crime rates. The data show exactly the opposite. Throughout American history, immigrants have consistently had similar or lower incarceration rates than U.S.-born citizens. This holds true across all immigrant groups, regardless of the origin country or time period of arrival. And yeah, I think every study can be used to push an agenda, and I think that's what this study is kind of doing. But I do think it's interesting how, people do kind of inherently link immigrants of crime, especially illegal immigrants, because, that's inherently a crime. But, ultimately, I do think, a lot of immigrants are hardworking, and it shows that, that in some instances they might be less likely to do crime than native-born citizens. But it's still important to remember that all studies can be used to push an agenda, and this is just another one of those. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Utah firefighters watch as their Republican representatives take away their right to collectively bargain, from Ragnar OKXD, and that's crosspost from the Leopards Ate My Face subreddit, and this tweet from Salt Lake Tribune. Firefighters look on from the gallery as the Utah Senate votes to advance a bill that will take away their right to collectively bargain, photo by Tribune photographer Trud Nelson. And yeah, I personally don't care for unions, especially public sector unions. But, ultimately, if they want to justify collective bargaining, I don't think the government should be telling them whether or not they can't, as long as it's voluntary collectivism rather than forced collectivism. And yeah, I think the main issue here is that we have private public fire departments in the first place instead of private fire departments. Everything should be private, including the fire department and the police, and I think that's very much the libertarian position. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, this is why New Mexico ended qualified immunity, more than 10 officers being investigated due to DWI scandal, from Quote.com by Ragnar OKXD. And yeah, I don't think that's very good. And yeah, I definitely do think police need to be held accountable just like everyone else when they break the law. And that's why I personally I'm very against qualified immunity. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, Trump said he hadn't read Project 2025, but most of his early executive actions overlap with his proposals, from CNN.com by Baton 13. And yeah, Project 2025 was a generic Republican policy wish list. They issue it every 4 years. but as the mandate for leadership, the Heritage Foundation. But the past didn't get the past ones didn't catch on, but this one did because the media constantly fearmongered about it. So yeah, if you want to think everything Trump does is Project 2025, you should be able to do so. But with that being said, it's just really just generic Republican policy that would be passed by any Republican president, not just Trump. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, just a moment, California cops get caught being naughty with their database privileges 7,000 times in 1 year from boingboing.net by Badon 13. And yeah, as I said earlier, I don't think we should have any government databases whatsoever. I think if you want to make your own databases, that's fine. But I don't think the state should have databases it can use to track people, because I think that it's gonna use those to like spy on people and get them if they do a wrong thing or a wrong action. And I don't think that's very libertarian. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.